So I am joined today for our Hey Legal quiz by Sheila McCall QC. So hello, Sheila.
Hi Edith, how are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Nice to see you, even in the virtual.
Exactly. I know it's good to see you too. But this seems to be the norm now, doesn't it? Seeing people across the screen.
I know, and actually I miss people. That's the good bit about our job, I think, is just bumping into folk.
Yeah, you definitely don't get that. Or if you do, there's certainly far less people milling about courts nowadays as well. So you're just not having the same contact. Anyway, I'm sure the quiz will brighten our day up, so we will just get on with it.
Okay.
So thank you so much for agreeing to take part in this, our second tranche of the quiz. So we will just get going with it. So our first question is the same couple of questions to start with as the last quiz, and then we change it up a bit. The first question is, if you weren't a lawyer, Sheila, what would you be?
Do you know, it's difficult because I always wanted to be a lawyer. But when I was applying to university, I thought maybe I better apply for something else in case I don't get in. So I applied to do English and music at Edinburgh, and I got offered a place to do that. But then I got into law, so I went to do that. So I suppose I would probably be an English teacher by day and a mediocre saxophonist by night.
So it's a saxophone you play?
Well, I did play. I don't play anymore, but I did play when I was young, yes.
Are you just saying that in case I asked you to give us a tune?
No, I don't play anymore. I haven't played for a long time.
Oh well. So that would have been the route you took. But
yeah.
And when you say you always wanted to be a lawyer, was that from a very early age?
Yes, which I think is weird. And I don't really know where it came from, because I didn't know any lawyers. My family weren't lawyers.
Right.
My parents hadn't gone to university, so maybe it was watching Crown Court or something.
Yeah.
In the 70s. I don't know, but yeah, from a very young age.
Okay, very good. All right. Question number 2. Did you have a nickname at school? And if so, what was it and why were you given it?
I had a limited nickname in that some teachers used to call me Ivy Benson. Fortunately, my friends didn't call me that, but some teachers used to call me Ivy Benson, and it connects to my first answer because Ivy Benson was a saxophonist and a big band leader in the 40s, and she had an all-girl band. She was called Ivy Benson and her all-girl band. Okay. And they became the BBC's resident big band orchestra. Mm-hmm. So when I was at high school, I played in a lot of big bands, and so one of my English teachers named me Ivy Benson, and it sort of stuck for about 3 years with a variety of teachers. Fortunately, it's not followed me, although I expect it'll be shouted at me across the salt market at some point.
Potentially, yes. So you must have been playing your saxophone at a pretty high level if you were in a number of bands and you were quite renowned for your playing.
Yeah, I was okay.
Yeah.
I was okay. As I say, I would have been a mediocre saxophonist, I think, in the end.
And do you never play now? Do you just not ever pick it up? Or
I don't, because I got to the point where what I wanted to play, I didn't have the technical ability.
Right.
And I thought, unless you start practicing, 5 hours a day and do it properly, I wasn't going to get to the level that I could hear in my head.
Yeah.
And I also there's only so many times you can play in the mood in your lifetime,
Oh dear. I know I played the piano till I got to grade 8, and I don't play now at all. And I don't know, I found it quite difficult to play it, but I was a bit of a perfectionist. So maybe that's the problem with us both, that you know what you'd like to sound like, and you know how hard it is you'd have to work to achieve that. So best just not to bother at all.
Yeah. And I discovered Jan Garbarek, who's a Norwegian saxophonist, plays in a very sort of modern kind of style. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, I'm never going to be that good.
Right.
Do you know?
Yeah.
I'm just going to admire from the audience.
Yeah. No, I get that. All right. Question number 3 is, what was your first job?
When I was in high school, 6th year, I think, 5th or 6th year, I got a job as a cleaner in a sports club.
Okay.
I think I got paid £1 an hour, something like that. It was a job of extremes. So the best bit of it was sweeping the squash courts, because you got this huge soft brush and you just kind of go up and down in a very zen sort of way. That was lovely. The worst bit, the gents' bar toilets.
Oh no.
Horrific, Edith. You've no idea. So I did that for, I think I lasted, I don't know, a few weeks. And then I thought, this is absolutely awful.
So you had to clean the entire place?
Mm-hmm.
Goodness.
Yeah, I think I did I don't know, it was only something like 5 hours a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
I went round after school for an hour or in the morning or something for an hour and did a bit,
Oh.
It wasn't a massive place, but, it was enough to be going along with.
Sounds like it.
My first job, yeah.
Oh, goodness. Oh, well, I admire you for that, Sheila. I don't think that could have been me. Oh, dear. All right, question 4. What do you recall of your first court experience?
Absolutely nothing. You're going to discover as we go through this a theme with me, Edith, which is I have no memory for these things.
Oh, really?
It must have been, a pleading diet or an intermediate diet or something. I remember not a thing about it.
Really? No, and not because you're so terrified, just because your brain has just removed it.
It's just chucked it out. Nothing dramatic happened. I remember my first jury trial. I think that's probably my first actual memory of court, and it was because my client was well known to the drug world in East Lothian, and he'd allegedly stabbed another man in the drug world in broad daylight at sort of noon in the high street in Trinent, while these wee women were out doing their shopping, So it was not an easy case because there was just these little housewives from Trinent out getting their messages who said, I saw that and here's what happened.
Oh.
And he was on licence from the High Court at the time for assault and robbery. And so the jury were out and the fiscal and I were looking up the recall provisions for High Court sentences because we could see where it was going. Anyway, the jury came back and he was acquitted, much to everyone's astonishment. And the fiscal burst out laughing. And the accused jumped over the dock into the well of the court, gave me a cuddle, and then ran out the door shouting, "See ya," to the sheriff. So I remember that. But before that, I don't remember much, I have to say.
Really? I don't, now that you say, obviously I've not applied my mind really to the questions because I know I'm going to be asking other people, but I did my traineeship out in Hamilton, and I've got vague recollection, but I don't know that it would necessarily be my very first appearance, but it was probably one of the first, because I certainly don't do your first and then become perfect. I just remember there being lots of other agents round the table just feeding me the lines to say, so I was just standing there and it was ridiculous, but yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit like you. I think my brain just kind of removes these memories, although I'll remember ridiculous things or facts or whatever that would mean nothing to anyone. But anyway, all right, let's move on to question number 5, which is who is your most inspiring colleague?
If I'm ever asked that, I always give a different answer. So today my answer is going to be Francis McMenamin, QC. Francis has quietly gone along doing some of the most complex, most pressured cases, while at the same time maintaining this lovely, personable approach to everybody. And it's to be much admired, I think. Mm-hmm. And I remember instructing her when I was a solicitor and she was a junior counsel. And it was a sheriff and jury. It was a really difficult case with abusive learning disabled adults in their residential facility. And it was before anybody had learned about vulnerable witnesses or any of those techniques were in place or measures were in place. And Francis approached it with such respect and dignity that I thought, that's so impressive. And a very interesting way to do your job. Because people do our job in all sorts of different ways, as you know. But I've seen her in a number of different forums, and I've had the privilege of reading a number of her jury speeches in different contexts. And I just really like the way she communicates and connects with people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's my choice today.
Oh, Yeah, I would. Yeah, I just love Frances. She's wonderful, and you're right, because, and I think certainly, in her, when she was going through the process of becoming QC, etc., and she was kind of out there on her own as the lone, not the lone female, but there weren't many females doing what she was doing, and no doubt people would comment that her approach was not appropriate, because I certainly remember. As a solicitor, and probably when I first started at the bar, there was a kind of tendency of people to be shouting and aggressive, and that's the way you cross-examined. Whereas Frances just isn't like that at all. She approaches it entirely differently. So, yeah, I think that's a very appropriate answer for a very lovely lady. Question 6 is, how do you define success?
I think on a personal level, that after, nearly 30 years in practice, there are still days that I wander home from work thinking, that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. I've enjoyed myself today at work. That to me is success. Yeah. After all that time, you can still find something interesting at your work and still enjoy your work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good answer. I like that, Sheila.
Not every day, I should say.
No. But at least there are some days.
Cling to those days.
Question number 7. Favourite holiday destination? What is a holiday? But
I know. I remember those in the bygone days. I don't have a place that I go over and over again, the same place. But I suppose the places I've been most and go back to are Italy and India.
Okay.
Those I would say are my 2 favourites.
What attracts you? I mean, it's maybe an obvious. Certainly Italy, I can imagine. India's not a place that I've ever had a desire to go to, but what attracts you to India?
The people. They're just wonderful people.
Mm-hmm.
The weather, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, it's both same with both places, actually. The people, the weather, and the food, probably. But India is a fascinating country of many contradictions, and it's got an extraordinary history. So, you can explore it for years and never, see all of it or get to know it really. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a place I've been a number of times.
Okay, and to different, you're saying you don't go to the same place. People quite often, I certainly have a favourite holiday destination, but it's one place. But do you go and travel to different places each time you go there? Yeah,
I tend to do that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's some places you go again, but just as a sort of, either as a stop on the way or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, in India, I've been to Mumbai a number of times, because it's a place where you can land and then go from there down south or whatever. But moving around is good.
Yeah. Okay. Question 8. Your most memorable case?
I've been lucky. I've been involved in a lot of high-profile cases and memorable cases, but I think Lockerbie is probably the one that is the most memorable and a whole number of reasons. I was involved in it at the stage of the first reference by the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Right. So obviously it's just been heard again recently. So this was back in sort of 2008, 2009. And it was a fascinating experience. I was working in The Hague at the time, and I was asked if I would accept instructions, and I thought, what an opportunity to come back and be involved in a unique case in Scotland, the only judge-only bench that there'd been in a trial, a truly international case, really complex issues in the evidence and in the appeal. But I think the most memorable bit about it for me was just the teamwork involved in it, because we don't, in our job, get to do a lot of teamwork. I mean, we do in a very limited way, a team of 2 or whatever. But in this one, there'd been a QC involved in it who'd come out of it, and I was replacing him. But it was led by Maggie Scott, now Lady Scott, and Jamie Gilchrist, now Sheriff Gilchrist, was in it. Me, Martin Richardson, we were the sort of council team, and then the solicitors were Tony Kelly, now sheriff, and John Scott, QC. So it was a big team, and a very good team with really different sort of personalities and skill sets within it. And that was a great experience. And then I suppose what's memorable about it is, apart from the case, is the compassionate release of Mr. McGrahy, which was unprecedented and brought the whole thing to a very sudden end. And I'll never forget the day when we were told that's what he wanted to do, and he wanted to abandon his appeal. So it was memorable for that reason, if nothing else.
I'm sure. And how long then were you're talking about working in that team? Because as you say, our job, you can be in quite a long running trial and you kind of get settled in, don't you? Well, as long as you're happy with who's about you, but generally, there's a bit of camaraderie, and you quite like, it's a bit like a normal job sometimes. If you're in a long running trial, you're going to the same place with the same people for a few weeks on end. But how long were you involved with that particular team then for?
I was in it for about 15 months, maybe.
Right.
The others had been in it longer because they'd gone through the process of, Maggie Scott making the application for the reference, which takes a long time. And then they'd been involved in framing the grounds of appeal. So by the time I got back, the grounds of appeal were set. And we were just preparing the arguments for the appeal court. But, we were working on it full time. So we worked on it every day. Right. We had a team meeting every morning. We took over a room in Parliament House. And so there was just constant discussion and, strategy about it. And then we all went off and did our individual parts that we were responsible for. So it was a long time and a full-time thing. Yeah,
very involved. And then I suppose it's just like a job, and then it comes to an end, and you kind of miss folk for a while, don't you? And then you move on to the next thing.
Exactly.
All right. Question number 9 is, who has had the biggest influence on your career in law?
That's difficult because, I'm influenced by so many people that I meet. But I suppose my first boss was a big influence, Alec Lafferty. Did my traineeship with him and then worked with him for about 7 years or so as a solicitor. And he was a man that really thought critically about the law and was willing to discuss it and probe your ideas and encourage you to think outside the box, which suited me, I have to say. But he was also a man that just thought about life. And so we would, sit in the office at lunchtime having a sandwich, talking about all sorts. And I suppose what I learned from him was, how to think about the law, and also that the clients are the important thing at the end of the day, and that that's the focus of what you're doing. So he was a big influence. Yeah,
and that's sadly that's not always where people see it, and that is fundamentally what we're doing, is to try and get the best outcomes for clients, but that somehow gets lost by some. But that's a good way to approach it, and just go back to the kind of foundations of what you're doing and why. But
and also thinking about managing your clients' expectations. That's a horrible sort of management speak way to put it. But I remember him saying to me, the worst thing you can do is go into the court and your client gets the jail and doesn't know it's coming. That's, we've all seen that happen in a court where someone just collapses.
Absolutely. And yet it is the one that's the one question that your client wants to ask: how long am I getting? And it's the most difficult one to answer, because genuinely you might have an idea, but the minute you provide a figure, you're kind of stuck with it, and that doesn't manage their expectation, or they'll say, oh, so and so told me I'll be getting this. To try and dissuade them from that without telling them a specific timescale is difficult. But you're right, and you've got to just be honest with them and say you wouldn't be doing your job properly if you were to give them any old nonsense, which, as you say, you do see, or you have seen over the years, happen in courts. So It's always a tricky question, isn't it, when you go to see them?
What's going to happen? Don't know.
I know, exactly. Oh dear, anything could happen. All right. Question number 10 is your funniest or most memorable court moment.
Well, I had to really think about this because, as you know, I've got no memory. I went to work at the ICTY in The Hague in the mid-2000s as a prosecutor in the War Crimes Tribunal. And I was the first defence lawyer that they'd employed in the Office of the Prosecutor. And it was a bit of a shock for them, and a bit of a shock for me too. But I was doing an appeal where the appellant decided he wanted to represent himself. His name was Momcilo Krajnik, and he'd been with Karadzic. He'd founded the Serbian Democratic Party. He'd been the Speaker of the National Assembly and so on. So he was a very prominent politician. And he was allowed to represent himself on appeal, which caused huge problems for me because I was coordinating the disclosure with the defence, and he was in the detention unit, and they weren't allowed a computer or access to the internet, and everything was electronic. So I went uphill and down dale with the security guys, the IT guys, trying to find a solution. Anyway, eventually we sorted it out, and I managed to get him the disclosure. And we arrived at a procedural hearing before the appeal, and the presiding judge said to him, "Well, Mr. Krajnik, how is disclosure going? Have you received all the disclosure that you need?" And he looked over at me, Mr. Krajnik, and he said, "She may be my arch enemy, but Miss McCall's very helpful." And I thought, my career as a prosecutor is complete. I am someone's arch enemy.
Oh goodness! Oh, that's amazing. That's incredible, though. So you were actually, he was able to get access to all that by you having jumped through hoops to get it for him. Yeah. Amazing.
And I never thought that was going to be my job, sorting out IT problems and prison problems, but there we are. It had to be done.
So remind me, Sheila, how long were you in The Hague? How long did you work?
I was there about 3 years, and then came back to do the Lockerbie case.
And have you ever, presumably that you thoroughly enjoyed your time there, but is it something that you kind of did that, tick the box and you've done it, or do you ever have any inklings to do something similar again, or, to travel or?
Yeah, I think, if there's I've sort of taken the approach of if it's interesting and there's an opportunity, then go and do it. Yeah. What's to be lost? So yeah, I have kept up with international law and, dip my toe in occasionally thinking about things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good experience. It was not easy given the subject matter. There was not a lot of light moments, shall we say, in the cases. But it was a really good experience, and I certainly came back a much better lawyer than I was when I went.
Right. Incredible. Really, I imagine it just be incredibly interesting to do something like that. Where are we now? Question number 11, which is, we all make mistakes. What did you learn from a professional error?
It's just difficult, Edith, because the insurers might be watching. I'm going to come at it in a different way, because I think we can always learn from a case or how we've done something. I'm quite self-reflective, so I think what could I have done better or differently about that? And I was thinking back to when I was new at the bar, and I did quite a lot of appeals. And at that time, the Sheriff Appeal Court obviously didn't exist. So you were straight in with the big boys in the appeal court. And Alan Rodger was the Lord Justice General at the time. And I remember, not just one, many appeals where I would think, right, I've got a good argument. Here's what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to get to my conclusion. And I would get halfway through and Lord Rodger would just say, "Yeah, but Miss McCall, isn't that the answer?" And I go, "Of course it is. Of course it is." And as soon as he said it, I would think, "I'm an idiot." Do you know that? That's obvious. So what I learned from that, happening over and over again, was think it all the way through. and then think why you're not right. That's the key thing, I think, to a legal argument is, why is it not right?
Mm.
And then it gets easier. Once you work that out, it's easier.
I still have those moments, Sheila. And I hope most people, I'm glad to hear if you do, but you just, and you really do think, how did I not see that? But I think perhaps it is just being so determined in your line of thinking without actually stopping to maybe look at it from another angle. Or sometimes you just have to argue something that you know isn't going to be successful, but you can get quite caught up in it. But yeah, it's that kind of moment you think, good grief, how did I miss that? You know,
I've still occasionally got up to make an objection and found myself speaking and then thought, what a lot of rubbish. I had to gracefully sit down again, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's the realization and actually saying, do you know what, this is going nowhere. I'll just leave it there. Oh, but that must have been incredible. I suppose to be prompted or taught even by Lord Roger at that stage, you know, you would have learned a lot in the appeal court and particularly with him.
Just watching the way he thought about things and also learning what frustrated him, because you could see he would disappear under the bench. You could see him kind of gripping the edge of the table at certain points. But he had such a quick mind and what struck me as a kind of encyclopedic knowledge of case law. Yeah, he would just alight upon it and think about it and express it in a very clear way. I mean, you see that in his judgments. That's how he thought. So it's good to learn from those people. And I, you know, as you know, 2 minutes in the door, did not expect to be on the same playing field as Lord Roger. So. You know, and I wasn't, so that was fine. It's fine to be tutored, you know.
Absolutely, I know. All right, question number 12 is, what do you do to stay well?
Oh, you know, the basics. Get a bit of exercise, get enough sleep. I do a bit of Pilates. I like to go out on my bike if it's not pouring with rain. Okay. Always take a Saturday off.
Right.
Try and not get caught up in a row on Twitter. You know, the basic things, you know.
Twitter's terrible for that. I'm on various social media platforms. Not that I'm on it that often, but you do find yourself checking it throughout the day. But Twitter's one that I've come to quite recently, and I'm really surprised at how aggressive people are on there. I mean, it just really seems to, people like that seem to thrive on there. So yeah,
you can just go down a rabbit hole. Yeah. And, I mean, I don't really use Twitter in that way. I don't get involved in those kinds of things, but just even sort of passing in front of your eyes, you have to sort of remember this is not the real world, you know. Yeah,
and also that it's there. It's worldwide and it's been published forever for everyone to see. But that seems to bypass a lot of people. Yeah. All right, so well. You don't have any particular sports or anything like that you like doing, or?
No, I don't. I mean, I did a lot of sport when I was young, but I don't really do that now. I mean, you know, I go out on my bike, I go out for a walk, I do Pilates.
Yeah.
That keeps me reasonably healthy, I think.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Question 13, Sheila, is what advice would you give on dealing with challenging clients?
Stay calm. Stay open, actually, because they may be right in what they're saying. And also remember that, you know, it may just be another job to you, but it's not for them. So sometimes the reason people are challenging is because it is so important to them what you're dealing with. And we can kind of forget that a little bit because we do it all the time. And we meet many clients in that situation. So yeah, I think just understanding their perspective is a good idea.
Yeah.
And setting boundaries, you know? Yeah,
absolutely.
You don't need to listen to clients shouting and swearing at you, actually, you know. But you do need to listen to them challenging your advice or how you're approaching a case because they might be right.
Yeah, that is very true. Because the amount of times you hear someone and you think you can easily think, oh, what do they know? Or oh, somebody's told them that and it's load of nonsense. And then it actually turns out there's merit to it. And you kind of think, maybe you shouldn't have told them to be quiet so quickly. Have you ever, just as we're talking here, I was just thinking, have you ever felt physically threatened by anyone in any situation like that? Any clients?
Not physically threatened, no. But I have on occasion had a solicitor sort of say, just calm down and don't speak to counsel like that.
Yeah.
You know, or I've occasionally said to a client myself, look, let's just take a wee breather for a minute, you know. But I think, you know, sometimes just acknowledging that you are telling them something they don't want to hear is enough to diffuse it. You can say, look, I know this is really difficult and I know you don't like what I'm saying, but here's why I'm saying it. You know, let them see behind the curtain a little bit of what you're doing can sometimes help. But I don't think I've felt physically threatened, no.
Yeah. Obviously, generally speaking, despite people being unhappy, they can see that you are on their side. You're trying to do, you know, you've got their best interests at heart. But it is delivering those difficult things. But I think you're right, and just articulating, as you're saying, you know, I know this isn't easy. This is not what you want to hear, but this is what professionally I have to tell you, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. Can diffuse it a bit, and yeah. I think because a lot of people ask me, oh, do you know, you go into prisons and you not feel scared, and you think, well, I also can't think of any situations where I've felt physically threatened, or you know, occasionally maybe you have somebody in state hospital or something where you know there's potential for that, but they're not in the right mind or whatever. But I think generally people they know, they respect what you're there to do, and you can. It's in your own approach as well, isn't it, as to how these situations kind of pan out. But
yeah. Okay.
Question 14 is: would you recommend law as a career?
If it's your passion and you're interested in it, yes. If it's not, then no. Because a lot of law is very dull, let's be honest. And a legal career is very long and can sometimes be just, you know, trudging through it. So I would say actually just find what you're passionate about and follow that as your career. That would be my advice to anybody. And just, you know, take a risk. If you think something's interesting and you want to have a go, have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose in the current climate, it's difficult, and certainly I'm a tutor at Glasgow University, albeit reserve at the moment, but it's very difficult when you see all these young students coming in and dead keen, and then you know that there aren't the traineeships there at the end, and it's very difficult, especially those who want to do criminal law, because I think that those are the most scarce traineeships available. But I always kind of, like you, if you've got a real desire to do it, and that's where you've always, you know, a heart's desire to do that particular job, then I would never put anyone off from pursuing that, regardless really of the situation, because you just don't know. But it is difficult nowadays, really, isn't it, with the way that the law is and funding and things for people coming into it.
Yeah, you know, a career in law is different things to different people. Yeah. So you and I do a very particular kind of thing. But you know, my flatmate from university does law around fintech. I don't even know what that is. No, I mean, I do know what it is, but you know, some people sit and write commercial property contracts all day. Yeah. That's a career in law, but it's not one I would recommend from where I sit. But they probably really enjoy it. So that's it. You know, find what it is about it in law that you like. But not all law is going to inspire you. I mean, I probably like you. I sat through university, many courses thinking I just have to get this exam, and I never want to see another mercantile bill of lading again. You know,
tax law and the likes. Yeah, But as you say, that would float somebody else's boat, and we all need to be different to to keep the world going. Okay, question 15, Sheila, is what aspects of your job bring you the most satisfaction?
I think doing a good jury speech, I think, can be very satisfying. You know, you maybe got a difficult case to kind of pull together, and you manage to do that, and you manage to engage the jury's attention, even the ones that don't want to look you in the eye. That quite satisfying. And in a wider sense, I suppose, just finding a solution to a real life problem using the law. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm not terribly interested in law as an academic kind of, let me just think something up for the sake of thinking about it. But if someone comes and says, here's the situation, what can I do? I quite like trying to find the answer to that.
Okay. I will bear that in mind. Because I have people asking nothing. I've got no idea where you would even begin, you know, if it's not in your particular area. But you like that kind of challenge of having to work out how the law fits around that, or how that fits around the law. Yeah. Okay. Question 16 is, what skill should every lawyer have or learn? Listening. I think lawyers do a lot of talking, and actually the key to it is listening, no matter what it is. So I remember when I was deviling, I devilled to Ian Duguid in my criminal deviling. Mm-hmm. And Ian is renowned, as you know, for not having any notes, or not at least being seen to have any notes. After that, he's actually very well prepared. Yeah. But when we were talking about cross-examination, I said, how do you work out what it is you're going to ask? And he said, I just listen. I listen to the evidence in chief, and then I know what I'm going to ask. Mm-hmm. And that sounds very simple. Actually, there's a lot behind that, because you have to really know your case. Yeah. But it's true, because if you listen, you hear things that you didn't expect, and you find the way into a cross-examination or whatever. The same with, you know, listening to clients. Because in the midst of all the stuff that in your brain you're thinking, doesn't matter, there's something in there that you need to hear, because that's the thing that's going to help solve the problem or present the case. So yeah, listening. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, because they, particularly when their clients are speaking, they don't appreciate what's going to help. They might think they do. And of course, nowadays, especially with the sexual cases, a lot of what they're saying, well, probably is relevant, but not in law. So, you know, the other stuff maybe gets lost. And again, like you're saying with the listening to the examination in chief, because I think you can be very focused on the cross, and, you know, you're just thinking, right, I'm going to ask this, does that, you know, will that fit in with it or whatever? But yeah, listening is a very good answer and good advice. So, absolutely. We could all do more of that. 2 ears and one mouth, so definitely utilise those more. Question number 17 from the original quiz. This question has survived. Your favourite chocolate bar? Do you know, I don't actually eat a lot of chocolate. In fact, I very rarely eat chocolate, but probably just a dairy milk or something. Right. Really simple. Should we have kept the crisp question in for you, Sheila? Your favourite crisps? Are you more savoury? I'm more a savoury person. I do like a crisp. I mean, I like a plain crisp though, so it's not a very exciting answer. Okay. All right, question number 18 is, what job would you be terrible at? I think probably anything that involves going to the same place at the same time every day and doing the same task. Mm-hmm. You know, I like the variety in my work. I do a lot of different things, and I enjoy that. I enjoy getting up and thinking, right, oh, this is a bit different today. Yeah. But I admire people that can go and do the same thing every single day at the same place for the same number of hours. Mm-hmm. I think it would drive me absolutely insane. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and our job certainly is varied. So if nothing else, we can say that about it. Yeah. Okay, question 19 is your favourite animal And the other condition is that if you have a pet, you're to it has to make an appearance on screen. I'm not seeing any animals obviously at the minute, but I'm wondering if you come in with a parrot on your arm or something, Sheila. No.
I wish. I don't have a pet. We used to have a dove that lived in our house.
Oh.
We lived out in the country.
In your house or in a dove coat?
No, in the house.
Right.
Rescued. It had fallen out of its nest, and my partner's son rescued it. And we phoned the RSPB, and they said, "That's not good."
Right.
Anyway, God bless him, he kept it alive, and it survived. And then lived in our house. It couldn't fly, so it lived in our house for 2 or 3 years. And then one day walked out the back door and took off into a tree, and then couldn't get down. So I had to go up with a ladder and retrieve it. And then eventually it flew off, and that was it. And it lived outside at the end of the garden for a long time. Now, I don't know why I'm telling you that. That's not my favourite animal, but...
That's a really unusual answer. How interesting.
Yeah. No, dogs are my favourite animals, but I don't have one.
Oh.
Sadly. I know you do, and I'm hoping to see it.
Well, do you know, I've put her to daycare today because she just can be so annoying. That's a shame, Sheila. If I'd known, I would have kept her. I've got this thing sitting next to me, which is my niece's stuffed animal, so it looks slightly like Mabel. I think this is Winston, but yeah, Mabel's actually much cuter than that. I don't know, poor Winston gets dragged about the floor in a lead. Yeah, so sorry about that, Mabel. Sheila, I'm sorry that Mabel's not here. But just to go back to the dove for a moment. Did the dove have a name? I mean, was it kind of given a name because it was
inspiringly called Birdie?
And it would just hop about, would it?
Yeah, it just hopped about. I mean, occasionally we'd go up to the light shade or whatever and sit up there, or sit on a shelf, or sometimes sat on your head, which was a little bit annoying.
Well, that's so funny.
It's just like not having a budgie, you know, it's no different to that, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that's right. But doves are beautiful animals, or beautiful birds, but that is the first dove as a pet I've ever heard in a house.
I've set the bar for the quiz.
Nobody's going to give that answer. That's never going to be repeated. All right, Sheila, well, we've come to the last question, which is, what question should we have included?
Why did you agree? I don't know, actually. I couldn't think of a question that you should have included that you haven't.
Right. Fair enough. I know.
I failed at the last hurdle there.
Not at all. Not at all. I must say, that was Ali Thompson, whose company Heligal is, essentially. So you can blame him for that. That was not one of mine. But I actually thought it would be quite interesting to see what people said. So
get the questions for round 3 of the quiz.
Exactly. But Sheila, thank you so much. You've been so interesting. You've been a fabulous guest, and I just know that people will find this a really interesting watch when we do publish it. So thank you very much indeed for your time, and I hope to see you soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. See you soon.
All right, Sheila, thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye.